We are the Skylab Nuts. Tonight, or today, sorry, for our US viewers or our North American viewers, or this morning for our Australian viewers, which is at now 6 o'clock in the morning in Sydney, we have the legendary Tim Gagnon, who is the patch designer extraordinaire. A little bit of background info, just so people who might not know him can figure out how we got together. Tim, how I got to meet you. I was a member on Space Hipsters, and I heard all about what you were doing with patches and so forth. I'm like, oh, and you know how it is. You get to meet all these people virtually, and it was at Space Fest in 2017 where we met for the first time. And it's like, you put together the person, you're like, you're Tim, you're the patch guy. Right. So, Tim, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dwight. Love to be here.
Great to have you on.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, I would have loved to have come out last year for Space Fest. I'm actually doing my bit to help support them while they're not doing a show this year, unfortunately, but that's how it is. Greetings to the Poor family, Kelsey and Dylan and Sally and Thomas Zarin, if I got the name correctly. I have no notes in front of me. They're newborn baby, and I think that's partially the reason why there's no Space Fest this year. But to have a newborn and also organize a show would be a little bit too much.
That would be difficult.
Now, Tim, you did a story not too long ago. You did an interview, and you were talking about perseverance, how you never gave up. And I heard it through the grapevine that you designed a mission patch for the Skylab Rescue mission with Vance Brand and Don Lind. And
that was the very first patch I ever did.
Tell me how. Well, I've also seen photos of you when your dad took you to the Apollo 17 launch. Is that where you're interested in where your interest in space started, or was it before?
Oh, God, no. No, when I was a little kid and Alan Shepard and John Glenn were flying, my dad was a crew missile battery chief for a Nike anti-aircraft missile battery for the Connecticut National Guard. So we had been able to go out to open houses on the base, a few times. And to me, I'm 6 years old. The missiles my father deals with are the same as what launches Alan Shepard. I mean, I know, a kid doesn't know any different. So, to me, my dad was a steely-eyed missile man too. So we were glued to the TV every time there was a launch, and, the Life magazine on the coffee table and the whole 9 yards. I mean, it was just a great time to be a kid and have this new adventure start, and you get to witness it on a small black and white TV with 3 broadcast stations and rabbit ears on for the antenna.
I remember those days.
Yeah. And, so I was enthralled right from the beginning. And in 1972, as the Apollo program was ending, I wrote to my United States Senator and I said, I need to see an Apollo launch. And, could you please arrange an invitation for me to go through NASA? Excuse me. And darned if he didn't say sure. I mean, none of us were expecting a yes. Thank you for your interest, but kind of a letter is what we were expecting to receive in the mail. And so he was doing it. So I had to write back to him. And I said, I'm 16 years old. I can't rent a car, can't rent a hotel. Can you invite my father to go with me? And they arranged for both my dad and I to go down. And we spent 3 glorious days at KSC. And I got to witness the Apollo 17 launch standing next to the VAB. You may have seen in the Apollo 11 documentary that came out a couple years ago, you see the bleachers next to the VAB where all the big shots are. And we were at those same bleachers in 1972. Of course, I wasn't sitting down. I'm pacing back and forth waiting for this thing to happen. And it was at that launch that I learned that an outside artist not affiliated with NASA was asked to make the mission patch, and that was Robert McCall. He painted the Apollo 17 patch. And I said, well, that's what I can do. I'm not a right brain kind of guy. I won't be, calculating trajectories and mission control or running systems, but I can draw, I can paint. And so it was at that launch that I decided that's what I wanted to do.
That must have been spectacular to see the launch, for one, the only night launch up until that point.
Absolutely.
They also had the hold there. I think half an hour delay or something.
I think it was even greater than that. I think we were down like T-minus 30 seconds when they called the hold.
Oh, yeah.
And it was an errant signal. The computers that monitor all the systems were getting a signal that the third stage was not pressurized.
Yeah.
And so obviously, the launch would have been aborted. They could have launched the first and second stage, but then the third stage wouldn't have fired if that signal was accurate. And so they had to figure out, A, is this a good signal or not? And B, how do we get around, the abort, the software as it was back in 1972 that would delay the launch because of an errant signal. And I'm pacing up and down like an expectant father in a hospital waiting room. And my father used to love telling the story over and over again for years afterwards that finally, in desperation, I yell at the Saturn V 3 miles away, "You have to go tonight. I'm going home tomorrow." And it worked.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm very envious. I've never seen a launch other than on television. The closest I've come is in 1981, watching the Space Shuttle STS-1 launch. That was at 4:20 in the morning Australian time. My parents woke me up to watch that, and I remember trembling the whole time because since I was a kid, I was born in 1969. I have vague memories of watching Apollo 17 on television, on Australian television. Sure. But I grew up watching the development of the shuttle, and I remember watching the ALT landing tests and just anticipating the launch of the shuttle. So it was a big deal for me. And then the beauty was, and you probably did the same thing, after it launched on the same day, we watched the shuttle fly over Australia because the tracking stations in Tidbinbilla and Honeysuckle Creek were tracking STS-1. So I can imagine how that captured your imagination, that you then decided. Okay. So sorry, I'll come back to that thought.
Sure.
You then obviously after Apollo 17, Skylab started. Now with SL3, they had the problem where they were thinking about a rescue mission. Now, when did your idea for your preliminary patch design come about? Was it as you heard that they were having a bit of strife up there, or was it something?
No, it made the papers that they were planning to put in place. They had a rescue plan in work, in development right from the beginning of the program. And of course, when 1973 dawned and all the attention went to Skylab, all the mission patches were already designed because they had to launch, things that had the patch on it in advance, or make them in advance, because all the supplies for the crew were already aboard the workshop. And so it wasn't like they were going to design mission patches, a month before launch. All these things had been done. And so when I get word through the newspaper that they were planning a rescue mission, I came up with this design. And if you look closely, you'll see that it's colored pencil and crayon and magic marker, like Sharpies. And I mailed it off to Vance Brand, and I sent him a nice letter that I've heard that you're going to fly a rescue. It's likely that you'll fly a rescue, and I would like to offer you this artwork as a mission patch. And he wrote back in the first week of September that it looked like the rescue mission wouldn't be necessary, but he thanked me for my work and hoped I kept at creating artwork. And fast forward to 2017, when the year you and I met him and his wife at Space Fest. And I said, "Sir, you have no reason to remember this, but 44 years ago, I sent you artwork for Skylab Rescue." And his wife spoke up and says, "I know exactly where those are." And 44 years after I sent it to him, he sent it back to me. And I hadn't seen this piece of artwork in all that time. And I mean, I remembered what it looked like. So, I had the patches made up, and now they're available from AB Emblem along with the other Skylab set. And, that in 1973, that could very well have been my first mission patch.
That would have been cool.
For a 16-year-old kid, almost 17, well, yeah.
Oh man, imagine. I mean, that's Vance is such a great guy. We interviewed him at that same Space Fest to talk about his rescue mission, and sure. he just he was telling us all about it. And he goes, "Yeah, we basically just worked ourselves out of a job," and that's how it works in the field of astronauts. They are so committed to the job that yes, it might cost them a flight, but they have made sure that the Alan Bean crew with Owen Garriott and Jack Lousma were able to come back on their own without having to launch another spacecraft. Who knows what the public outcry would have been had they had to launch another shuttle. I bet you there would have been journalists going, "Why are we wasting money?" Right?
Yeah.
So, and as you know as well, Skylab seemed to have been plagued by problem after problem. I mean, that was the public perception.
Sure. Well, the public only pays attention. Even back then, the public only pays attention to the headlines.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they had their fair share of problems, no doubt, but they solved them. They came up with solutions, and that was a successful program.
That's right. In fact, there's this fellow, I've heard of him vaguely. I can't remember his name. He made a film about it.
and aren't we all glad that he did too?
Oh, I mean, if you only knew.
Pete Conrad, I've even seen interviews where Pete Conrad said that he was more proud of his Skylab flight than he was walking on the moon.
Well, that's what Alan Bean said.
Of the success that they had solving the issues with the workshop and the sunshade and all the rest of it.
Well, that's the whole thing, for me, again, Australia has its own part in the space program. We were the dumping ground of Skylab in 1979. And I do remember when I was a child watching news reports about certain Skylab missions, because when I was doing the film and I was watching some of the telecasts they did, I'm going, I remember watching that. And, but for me in 79, as a 10-year-old, it embodied everything that could have been perceived as a failure. It's like, how can this great NASA lose control of a space station? A 10-year-old mind doesn't think, well, it's because of the solar flares and all that. And and this is a credit to the people who worked on Skylab. I, up until 2018, still thought that it impacted in Australia, and that was a failure. When Mark Pastana, who was at NORAD, was saying to me, "You have no idea how much we learned from the fact that it came down for other heavy objects that were to come down later." And I was like, "So you never thought of this as a failure?" He said, "No way. We learned so much there. This was a godsend." And I'm like, okay, everything, in my opinion now, of Skylab has been turned 180 degrees.
Sure.
And as you know, it's this forgotten era of NASA because it falls in the shadow of Apollo, and it doesn't get talked about. And what's so exciting about a space station as opposed to landing on the Sea of Tranquility or Taurus Littrow or wherever on the moon. But there is a lot of good stuff, and that's what got my passion. So I understand completely where you're coming from. And again, talking about the perseverance, because your story didn't end with Vance Brand, now did it?
No, it only got started in 1985. So 12 years after that, I wrote to Bob Crippen. I had written to him prior to STS-1, and he told me about this artist named Robert McCall that was going to do the STS-1 patch. And I said, you know, I didn't get to design STS-1 or STS-7 for that matter. That was another McCall art. But I said, you know, you guys are training to launch from Vandenberg on the first polar orbit shuttle mission. And I would love to submit artwork for that mission. And I submitted for it. He invited me, sure, would like to see what you got. He gave me some guidelines to follow. And he said that I don't know when we're planning on having a design complete date for the fall. So I, you know, had already been thinking about, you know, if he said yes, what could I send him? And I sent him for slightly better looking art than I sent to Vance Brand. And then after Challenger, that mission got canceled. And but you know, during the pandemic, I had learned back in 2014 that which one of those 4 designs that Crip actually liked, and it was the one with the eagle on it. And so during the pandemic, I was able to reach out to Mike Mullane and Jerry Ross and Crip via email. And I said, wouldn't it be neat to finish what we started back in 1985 and come up with a final design for STS-62A? And we were able to do that. And so I had a limited edition run of patches made for STS-62A with the sew on tab for the payload specialist, exactly the way they would have done that in 1985 and 86. And so I got to close that circle on STS-62A, you know, way after the fact. And Crip, I gave him the last word. He goes, nice patch. Wish we could have flown it.
Let's see. The thing is that you've got the astronauts paying attention to you, and that is half the battle already won.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even when they said no, they were very gracious.
Yeah. That's what I've encountered myself. You know, Paul Weitz, for example, he didn't want to be interviewed by us to begin with, and I convinced him that what he had to tell was worthwhile to tell. And once he started talking, he didn't want to stop. And this is the thing I've noticed with all these guys. When they see that you're really passionate and interested in what they have done or what they are planning to do, they have all the time in the world for you. And that is
sure.
That's something that's pretty incredible. You know, I work in television. I've been around a lot of famous people, and oops, sorry, just got the
no worries
thing blocking the camera. I'm always amazed how these people who have done incredible things up in space have the time to speak to someone like me. You know, I doubt very much I'm going to be flying in a rocket like probably you dreamed as a kid as well that you could fly in a rocket one day.
But the astronauts I've found are very genuine, but they have very good BS detectors. You know, if you're coming from them, if you're actually coming at them with genuine interest and real questions that they can tell you put some thought into, then they'll be happy to chat with you and share their stories. But if it's the old, you know, how did you go to the bathroom stuff, you know, they've already shut you down before you finished asking the questions.
What you build their trust, and you ask them all these obscure questions, and then you hit them with the one you really wanted to know the answer to. Tim, you gave me a slideshow. I've unfortunately, with the screen I'm using, it's very difficult, but would you like to go through that and explain what's on the slideshow? Sorry, this will be...
What I did was I made it Skylab centric because I knew we'd be chatting about it. And Skylab doesn't get the attention it deserves, so that's why I highlighted.
No, I never heard of Skylab.
Oh, there's a great film you got to check out.
Oh, it's so self-serving here. A shameless promotion day today, even
That's
though it's
all
not.
right. Hey,
Yeah.
you've done a service and given us a gift of the gold standard that other filmmakers one day will have to match. And that's a great film, and you should spring your arm, patting yourself on the back.
Look, all I remember when I think of that is coming up to your table at Space Fest and going, "Oh, hello, Mr. Gagnon, would you do our patch?" So you've got the patch in here, so we'll go through. Hold on.
Sure.
I'm just going to share the screen. It's going to be a bit messy when I do, but then I'll get it into full screen and hopefully everything will be nice. That is the correct one. And now I'll just start the slideshow from the beginning. There we go. So there we go.
That's my logo. That's the view from Titusville looking across the river at the launch pad. And that's a Apollo 17 on the pad. The station is passing overhead, and the 2 stars are for my grandsons. And
Cool.
When I added the 2nd star to that logo, my daughter said, "Dad, there won't be a constellation. This is it."
Well, I must say, the very first time I went to KSC, that was in 2010, and I drove up from Miami, and for me, it was the weirdest thing because I am intimately involved with KSC, JSC in a virtual sense. I knew all about it because I've seen the videos and so forth. And when you come over the bridge and you see the VAB, and you're like, oh wow, it's a real building. This place does actually exist. And you're like, right. Wow, what happened in this place? And then we did the tour and all that sort of stuff. That was an incredible.
That's one experience. Of the nicest things about Florida being so flat is that thing rises. You can see it from tens of miles away.
Yep. And I was so impressed, I actually brought my wife the next visit to come and have a look at it as well. And they actually, speaking of Skylab, because we're doing it all Skylab centric, they had the MDA trainer section that was sort of shoved in one corner. And I'm like, that's from Skylab. Not marked. It looked like it was, ready for the tip. And I was like, no. Somebody has to know about how important this thing is. And I think they auctioned that off to a museum or something recently. So anyway, next slide. Sorry, I digress.
No worries. This is the next slide is me discovering the trip where I discovered my career. That's my dad and I at KSC. The slide hasn't advanced, by the way. I can see the strip on the left side of the screen. So I don't know what slide you're looking at, but I still see my logo as the main.
Hold on. Reshare. Okay, that's interesting. Sorry.
No worries.
Every time I change, I have to. What? I understand. Now I understand. Sorry, my fault. Now you should see it.
There's me with hair on my head, but no facial hair yet. 16 years old. A little public service announcement. I was wearing a polyester jacket and polyester slacks, and I was dying. It was like 84 degrees. And I recommend that you don't do that. But it was the 70s, so,
70s were cool.
I got my big government envelope of NASA swag with the Apollo 17 press kit and some other stuff in there. And that's Apollo 17 between us, 3.5 miles away. And I mean, you look at, the McCall patch is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, everybody loves the Eagle landing on the moon, and they love the Horses of 13. But this, to me, is the best one. But it's because it's my trip. This is my first launch. So how could you not love it? And I saw that and I said, God, I would love to create something like that. And so I knew what I wanted to do in December of 72. It just took me to the next slide, um, next spring of May of 73 to learn how to do it. That's Frank Kelly Freeze. He is the artist that created the first crew patch for Skylab. And he did this painting for the cover of Analog magazine. But inside is an article where he details the entire process of sketches and the back and forth and everything else. And his point of contact with that crew was Dr. Joe Kerwin. And so when I finally got to meet Captain Kerwin, I said, we have something in common. You know, you worked with Frank Kelly Freeze, and it was that magazine article that taught me how to do that kind of work. And he related how much he enjoyed the process and the give and take with the artist. Next slide. And that's his wonder. I mean, when you see the actual embroidered patch, and you know, he details in the article how he had to teach them which direction to sew the threads and everything. I mean, it's an absolutely gorgeous patch, but you know, as beautiful as it is, you can see that is a different era than Apollo.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was, you know, absolutely gorgeous. And you know, I was just as impressed with that one. And I've never seen a more beautiful sunburst on any patch, you know.
No, it's
Or
spectacular.
since. Next. And so when it came time to do the program patch, I had to replicate Mr. Free's work. And then, of course, I added the like what I call the polo shirt version of the patch. You know, how they do a simplified version for a polo shirt for the second and third increment. But I wanted to honor everybody involved. So I've got the prime crew in the dark green. I've got the backup crew in the inner border. Schweigert, Musgrave, and McCandless backed up the first crew, and Brand, Lenore, and Lind backed up both the second and third crew. But then you got the support guys of Truly and Hartsfield, and then you have Smeat, the medical exam in Houston with Crippen, Thornton, and Bobco. And so, and then one last name, if you look under the SK, it's Walt Cunningham, because he was the first astronaut that ran the Skylab, actually Apollo Applications Office, after Apollo 7, until he was hoping to fly Skylab 1. And of course, that didn't happen. And then I represent the Skylab Rescue of the second CSM approaching the workshop. And so I wanted to highlight the entire program in this commemorative. And it's about 7.5, 8 inches in diameter. And I thought it came out really well. I wanted to do the mustard color of the uniforms. And then, of course, Skylab was really all about the Earth, what we can learn about space to help the people on Earth. So the green went with the mustard color very well.
I must say, I have that patch, and I made a jacket, my Skylab jacket, that sits on the back. And I remember it was at the Pontefract meeting with Jack Lausmer back in 2019. And we had an auction, and one of the things we auctioned off was a signed movie poster from Searching for Skylab. And I thought, well, I better look the part. So I put this jacket on. And I remember when they saw that patch, everybody was going, where did you get that patch? And how much can I buy your jacket for? And so I said, Tim Gagnon is the man you want to talk to. And I've seen the other ones you've done for Gemini, Apollo, and Mercury. I must say, I'm biased, but the Skylab one just looks fantastic.
Well, the object with this, with all of those patches, was to highlight the artwork that other artists did for those programs. And this was a way of doing that. So it celebrates not only the astronauts, but the people, all the people involved in the missions. Yeah. Next slide. Now, Skylab, you know, we've all are familiar with the numbering system with Skylab. You know, I remember the launch of the workshop, and I don't ever remember it being called Skylab 1. But apparently it was. Some internal NASA documentation, official mission designations. So when the anniversary was coming up, I said, well, if we're going to celebrate Skylab 1 and the launch of the workshop, then that needs a patch as well. And it shows the Saturn lifting, right before all hell broke loose, lifting the lab into orbit, and the workshop loses the solar protection and the one of the solar wings right after this patch illustrates. Next slide.
Well, if you look closely at the top right-hand corner, you can see it starting to peel off.
Yeah. Now, I couldn't, when I made this set for the 50th anniversary, I couldn't do better than Frank Kelly Freeze for Skylab 1. So I made this anniversary mission patch look like the magazine cover. But I made it accurate to history. There's only one solar wing. There's the sun shield on the lab. And I got the Roman numeral for 1 and / Skylab 2. So I was covering both bases. Some people still call it Skylab 1. Some people call it Skylab 2. I'm calling it both. And there was a editorial cartoon when the Conrad crew launched that showed a screwdriver launching into space because they were going to fix things. And I remember that cartoon. I mean, when an editorial cartoon nails it, you don't forget it. And I didn't see that cartoon again until after this patch was designed, but I knew that I needed to make a Saturn 1B flat blade screwdriver launching into space. And the "We Fix Anything" was like a crew motto. And then, of course, the border is the Navy colors because all 3 guys were Navy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought the AB emblem did a fantastic job on these patches.
Well, that's Pete Conrad when they launched. He says, Skylab 2, we fix anything. We got a pitch and a roll program.
Yep.
So next slide.
Yep. Now, this was the second increment. The biggest challenge here was, although I tried to improve on the original graphics, the Earth looks a little bit more like the Earth looks. The sun looks a little bit more realistic. But I didn't want Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man to look more realistic because, you know, the embroidery company wouldn't have made the patch. So we did a little shadowing where it was necessary. And then, of course, it's a Skylab 2/3. But the Spirit patch, I wanted to try to convey the essence of the mission. They attached the second solar shield. They actually accomplished 150% of their mission objectives, from what I understand, but they also took spiders into orbit. And so the top part of the patch is the first names of the crew, but in a Spider-Man, a Marvel Comics Spider-Man font style. And then Super Crew, that's right out of DC Comics of Superman. And so I haven't been contacted by either Marvel or DC, so I guess they're okay with it. And then they've got the Vitruvian Man is wearing the EVA suit that they wore, and so it came together really well. The Apollo telescope mount solar arrays are a little dark than I expected them to be, but all in all, I think they did a good job.
Cool. Very cool. That one.
And then, of course, here's one of my favorite patches. You never forget your first patch. And it shows the rescue craft approaching the lab. And I would imagine in this view, they're kind of doing like a fly around inspection before they dock, because if memory serves, their docking port was on the nadir side of the docking adapter.
Yep.
And you see on the patch, I've added the solar panel, the solar shield, and it looks just a little bit more realistic than the original artwork done in 1973 does.
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
Next. Now, Skylab 3/4. I remember the very first time I met any of these guys, and I said, how come on everybody else's patch it's a Roman numeral and yours is an Arabic 3? And I think it was Joe Kerwin that said, Car's crew screwed up. They were supposed to use Roman numerals and they didn't. And so, and what's with the whole, 1/2 and all that? Well, he said, easy to remember, think 1/2, 2/3, and 3/4. And so on the crew patch, the anniversary crew patch, I depict Ed Gibson in his on-orbit coveralls, because he was the science pilot and the mission was science. And I just made the atom and the tree a little bit more beautiful than they were in 1973. And in the Spirit patch, I've got them running on orbit around the Earth with an Arabic 4 ghost stitched in the background. The Kohotex comets in the sky, and the shape of the patch is the cleat on the bottom of their shoes where they would lock in to the floor, the grids on the floor.
Cool. I didn't even notice that, but yeah, awesome.
Yeah. And they set at least the American record for a number of years, 84 days. And so I nicknamed them Marathon Men.
Cool. Are you aware as well, Tim, on the official patch, there were two made, the one resembling what you've got here, and there's another one. And Tom Pogue, Bill Pogue's son, was telling me they did a special edition, and it has in the top corner Comet Kohutek as a yellow streak.
I think that was the Lion Brothers version of that patch.
Yeah.
Because Lion Brothers was very good at making mission patches, and they were AB Emblem's biggest competitor, I would say. And sometimes they succeeded better than AB Emblem did using the official NASA artwork.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice when they personalize things like that.
Yeah.
Now in 2013, I was able to create this patch for the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, and my wife and I attended the dinner at the Saturn V Center and enjoyed a wonderful evening. And so I wanted to include this in the presentation. It's the Earth and the sun and the workshop, all illustrated in the sky. The Astronaut Scholarship Foundation logo is in the lower corner, and I used the same font for the Skylab as I did on the program patch a couple of years later.
Cool. And just to show off, in the photo, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got Paul Weitz, Alan Bean, Jack Lousma, Jerry Carr, Bill Pogue, and Ed Gibson, correct?
Yep. Yeah, Owen Garrett, I think, was unable to attend at the last minute. And by this time, Pete Conrad, we had already lost him. He passed away in 1999. And I don't know where Dr. Joe was, but yeah, he was unable. So Kerwin and Garriott were unable to be there that evening, but it was still a fantastic night listening to these guys talk about their work on board our first space station.
Oh, hey,
Ah,
this is that film we were talking about. Yeah.
that's right. This guy came up to my table in 2017, and he had heard from Keith Haviland about me being able to do mission patches for movies. And this, honestly, this has got to be one of the easiest patches I've ever done, because your title tells the entire story. Cool. So, of course, you have to use a magnifying glass because you're searching. I've got the lab in orbit, the same Skylab font type from the official patch. And the only mistake I made was in the artwork, you see your name, a film by Dwight Stephen Benecke.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't really translate well into embroidery. And that part I regret.
I never had a problem. I thought it looked fantastic. So
yeah,
you never got any complaints from me. I remember when we got them from you, and I remember opening up because remember we were discussing how should the thing look, and will it be round?
Right.
There was another
I think we did a round, a square, and this one.
That's right. And I was like, you know what? It was one of the Gemini flights. The Shara flight had a similar shaped.
Yeah.
What is it? Octagon.
I think Shara's flight had a hexagon, and you
that's
had
right.
the octagon.
That's right. And then we decided to go with this. And again, in Pontefract in the UK, Mary Cohen, Jack Lousman's daughter, had her denim jacket on with all the mission patches, and lo and behold, on one arm she had this patch, and I remember sitting there just going, "Oh, whoa, that's pretty cool." It must be like when you see the astronauts wearing your patch. It's just this surreal feeling.
Absolutely, yeah. You are very appreciative that they like your artwork.
Yeah. Speaking of that, when we did the sneak peek of the film at Space Fest in 2018, I don't think I've sweated as much as I did when Amy Bean, when Mary Cohen and Ed Gibson were sitting in the audience. I didn't realize it at the time, but I think Mark Armstrong was in there as well. Thankfully, I was so nervous, I didn't really pay attention for the most part who was sitting in the audience. If I had, I don't think I could have. I would have been climbing up the walls. And, to sit there and to present the story that these guys were involved with, either their family members or Ed Gibson himself. And I'm just thinking, please let me have done this properly, because if I've stuffed them up, if I haven't honored them properly, then it's game over, And I remember at the end of the film, Ed just turned to me and he went, "Dwight." And I'm like,
that's all you needed. Yeah, that's all you needed right there.
Yeah. And the cool thing, another tidbit, your patch was featured in during the 40th anniversary of Skylab impacting in Esperance, Balladonia and Warallina in Western Australia. And Ed Gibson did a small appearance on a morning talk show. And he was wearing your patch, or our patch, but the one that you designed. And he made specific mention of the fact of the film and so forth. And it was like,
well, I may have done the artwork, but this is your patch. I never forget that I'm working for you. And I would always make suggestions to astronauts or whoever the client is based on my experience, that I think this will work and I don't think that will work, based on their feedback. But I never forget that it's not my patch. This is your patch. So you can say it's our patch, but.
And it's funny because when we talk with each other, it's not our patch, it's Tim's patch.
Yeah.
Now, I'm getting notes here. We have questions in the chat room. Is that correct?
Okay.
2 questions. How many more slides are there? Should we answer the questions now, or no? We'll keep going with the presentation. If I remember correctly, it's coming close. Unfortunately, we wanted to get Mary to join us. She was out of town and said She will try to sign in. She's very busy at the moment, so I don't think she's made it, right? We haven't got Mary? No, unfortunately not, because you said there's a special little thing in there, but I'm pretty sure, will watch this webcast at a later stage. So I will move on to the next slide.
Okay.
Oop, there we go.
Now, I'm not saying that Jack Lausma is Superman, but you never see Jack Lausma and Superman in the same room at the same time.
I think
that's all I'm saying.
Something. Yeah, come to think of it.
So this slide was my little gift to Mary. So whenever she sees it, I hope it brings a smile to her face.
Oh dear. Yes. We should have a little questionnaire at the end of the show. How many people start to see these strange coincidences that Jack and Superman are never in the same room? Interesting. Yes. So that's the end of the slides, isn't it? So I will stop sharing. And we can then move into the questions we've got for you, Tim.
Sure. Look forward to it.
Where do I go? Sorry. I'm getting directions from the side. Okay. Comment from the audience. Brilliant Skylab 1/2 patch. Will they be available to buy?
All the Skylab set that they just saw are available from AB Emblem. They can just search online for AB Emblem /Tim Gagnon, and it should take them to the gallery.
I can say, having several of your patches, Tim, you do not regret buying them. The big Skylab, seriously, that is, I would cry if anything happened to that one. We've got the series Mercury Gemini Apollo Skylab up on the wall. They are an art form unto themselves. Just put them in a frame, and everyone asks me, "Oh, what's that all about?" And I tell them the Tim Gagnon story. Okay, we've got another question. Tim, you must have a favorite mission patch that you didn't design. What one would that be? Is that the Apollo 17 one?
Apollo 17 is definitely a favorite. Of course, you got to remember, I was 12 years old when we landed on the moon. So all of the Apollo patches, I still remember looking at Boys Life magazine when I was a kid in Scouts. And at the back of the magazine, they advertised that you could buy the official mission patches for the first time, because prior to 1970, it was illegal to own the mission patches. They were available to the astronauts. They were available to the people who worked on the thing. But if you had a mission patch in your possession, you better have a good explanation as to why you had it. So back during the Gemini and the early Apollo days, no, there was no collecting mission patches. That was not going to happen. And so when I saw that advertisement the first time, well, I saved up my paper route money, and I ordered all of them, and I still remember when I get that big package from North Carolina of all the mission patches. And I mean, they're beautiful. I mean, Apollo 12 with the Yankee Clipper going to the moon. And I mean, it was gorgeous artwork. And so all of those, when I was a kid, definitely favorite ones. But there are a lot of great artists that I've learned that create mission patches with astronauts. And Luc van den Abeling in the Netherlands, Blake Dumasnil from Texas, even Mark Pastana, who doesn't do as many mission patches as a lot of the guys, because he's a fantastic fine artist. I mean, nobody can paint the X-15 like Mark Pastana can. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's been wonderful to be part of this community and have my work well regarded, such as it's been.
Cool. That is, yeah. I've got an obscure question for you here.
Sure.
If you were to design a mission patch for fictional space, for example, Star Trek or 2001 or something, what film would inspire you the most?
Well, I've on the whole Star Wars versus Star Trek debate. I always fall back to Star Wars took place in a galaxy far, far away a long, long time ago, and Star Trek is in the future. So I leaned more towards the future. I would like, as exhausting as our world has been over the last couple of years, I would like to look forward to a brighter future. And so, I would like to do something in the Star Trek universe. But Michael Okuda, fantastic artist, has pretty well got that locked up with Paramount. So,
Okay.
So Michael will would have to give me a permission. Hey, Tim, do this for us. And I would be happy to do it. But I did do a patch for a movie once. I did back when they were making the Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Before Ryan Reynolds became Deadpool, he was wearing that tight green suit.
Yeah.
And so there's a scene in Green Lantern where he is leaving Earth, going to the planet where Green Lanterns train, and he flies past the International Space Station. There's 2 astronauts on a spacewalk, and you see it on screen for maybe a half a second, but there's a mission patch on the spacesuit, and that's my creation.
Wow. Awesome stuff.
Well, the trick is
we're not worthy.
I had to sign an NDA, so I can't even show it to you now without written permission. Yep. And, of course, I had to pick the one superhero movie that's not getting a sequel.
Well, never say never.
I have done it for Iron Man,
Look, it took Blade Runner how many years? 40 years nearly to get a sequel. So you never say never. The night is still young. Got another question. Yeah. Actually, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Got another question for you. What does a patch need to be considered by you a really great patch?
Well, it has to tell the story clearly and so that you understand what you're looking at. I mean, I like seeing what they call Easter eggs and hidden things in patches as much as anybody. But the main mission goals have to be basically clearly defined in the patch. You have to understand what's going on and why is this the mission patch. If it doesn't do that, well, the crew wouldn't have accepted it in the first place. So, once it's approved by the crew, then it gets approved by management, and then it becomes official. But I mean, I've seen a lot of great designs, and I've been able to see artwork that were like the draft designs before the mission patch became the mission patch. Even McCall had draft designs for Apollo 17, and some of them are pretty outstanding. But once you see the final patch, you understand why that one's the final patch. It just didn't quite get there. So it's almost it when you see it.
Yeah. That leads to another question we've gotten. What is the most difficult part of designing a patch for you?
Keeping my mouth shut for months on end. Because, I mean, you have to understand, when I first hear from a crew, it's anywhere between 12 and 18 months before launch.
Yeah.
And they have to have it done, the artwork finished, a good 6 to 9 months before launch, because the patches have to be made. The polo shirts have to be made. They all have to be packed up and sent in advance. So, this is waiting for the damn thing to be unveiled is the hardest part, and not being able to talk about it that whole time.
Yeah, I could imagine. That's
I want to shout it from the rooftops, especially the very first one in 2004 when I did the Expedition 11 patch. Yeah. I worked on it with John Phillips from April 2004 until late September, October timeframe. it wasn't unveiled until the pre-flight press conference in February of 2005.
Wow.
And I knew it was coming, but I couldn't say anything.
Similar when I really wanted in our film to debunk the mutiny myth of SL4. And I thought, well, I need to hear the audio tape where Al Shepard gave them the on-air reprimand. Right. And the way the press had written it up and made it sound as if that was, they were about to be beheaded. And when I got the tape, I remember listening to it and I thought, I can't tell anybody this because this is our unique selling point. No one else has dug this tape out. And for a good 6 months, I think we had to keep quiet about the fact that we had it. Like you, I wanted to go, I got this tape, listen. And it's these things you have to do. I completely understand.
Well, I've learned, especially with that episode, that they're in the business of selling newspapers or selling clicks online. So, and how many online articles that have clickbait that have nothing to do with the body of the article? They just want you to open it and look at it. So they have their own agendas, and unfortunately, 100% truth is not part of it.
Yeah. A question coming to the making of the patches, which very interesting one that I'm reading here. Do your patches need to be tested for fireproofing and so forth? Is there a process that they need to meet certain standards?
Well, back in the Apollo days, the actual patch that flew on the suits were the screen printed on that beta cloth. But regular embroidered patches were packed in the flight kits. So any patches that I've created for the space shuttle or the space station programs, they have a special batch that's made for the crew, and that's like the first ones that are sent. But they're no different, essentially, as far as specifications go, to what you and I can get at the store. Right.
Have you ever seen your patches being made? Are you able to see them being physically made?
I've seen patches being made, but not mine. When I toured AB Emblem, I want to say beginning of 2018, they were it had to be beginning, it was like January of 2019. They were sewing the STS-60 patch on their machines at that point. Not STS-60, my mistake. ISS Expedition 60.
Yep.
The crew that was on board the ISS during the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. And they're making, 100 patches at a time on these massive machines. And it's amazing to watch how that's done.
Cool. That would be, that's a documentary unto itself.
Oh, sure.
Now, I got one question here. I don't know who sent it to me, but I'm going to read it anyway. You can take it or leave it. I think it's, I'll let the audience make up their mind. What aspect of Skylab do you think should be made into a patch, and why would it be the shower?
Well, I appreciate Jack Lausma as much as the next guy, but I'm not making a Jack Lausma in a shower patch.
Oh, please.
I'm sure there's a female artist out there somewhere that can make Lois and Emily very happy.
Oh, dear. Are there any more questions that we can get from the audience that will put me on the spot?
My Jack Lausma tribute was the Superman thing. That's it.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, again, my opinion, all the crews on Skylab just outperformed each other, in different aspects. Like, the rookie crew of SL4 are always the unsung ones, but they were up there for 84 days. No one had done that before.
I know.
the SL2 crew that actually fixed the solar panel and got the station up to a reasonable working benchmark workshop, that had never been done before. When we were interviewing David Hitt, he was saying to me, prior to that, there was no contingency plan. What do you do when things fail and you have to go outside and repair them? They had not done that before.
Sure.
And I think that for me, that's the whole post-Apollo stuff. Stops looking at the adventure of landing on the moon or another planet, taking it that step further and focusing on how to live long-term up in space. And it invokes much more thinking of how do you do this?
Right. I mean, if we're ever thinking of going to Mars, we have to know how to exist for months on end, in weightlessness. And Skylab was our first effort at learning that stuff. But there were two missions that had almost as an incredible experience as the repairs on Pete Conrad's mission. And that is when Scott Parazynski sewed the solar array during STS-120 when it ripped as they had redeployed it. And then the Hubble missions when they saved Hubble.
Yeah. Incredible.
I mean, NASA at its best will take a problem that seems insurmountable and they find a way to fix it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing when it works.
Right. Sorry to be interrupted. I just saw a word here that's got a special place in my heart now, Esperance. This is not one of your patches, Tim. Sorry about that.
That's all right. There are a lot of beautiful patches out there.
Have you seen the one from Esperance that they did for the 40th anniversary?
Put it up on screen and I'll let you know if I've seen that one.
You can kind of see it in the top corner there above Alexandra's photo.
Okay. Where the banner is.
Yeah.
I think you did show me that a couple of years ago.
They did a limited run of 500 of these things, and I take it you've never been to Western Australia. You've never seen the museum there in Esperance, right? I cannot think of a more beautiful place for Skylab to have actually impacted into than the whole Western Australia coastline and going inwards. You stand up there on it's a hill called Wireless Hill, and you have a 360-degree view of the ocean, of the Esperance surrounding area. And you could just imagine in 1979 watching this thing fly over and crash. And for me at the time, no one knew that much about Skylab outside of myself and the people. There we go. There's the
very nice. Very nice.
And you walk down the street, and I had the jacket with your big patch on the back, and people would stop me and go, when I was a little kid, I have to tell you, I remember Skylab crashing down, and Skylab. And everybody in this little town of around 20,000 people, they all knew what Skylab was. And I'm like, I found my home.
Yep.
It's the celebrations were fantastic. We showed the film there. We had they in Esperance had a competition, and a little schoolgirl by the name of Connie got to interview Ed Gibson via a Skype call. And for this little town that was just a little sea resort, and then suddenly placed onto the world map because Skylab crashed into it. And the thing that gets me, you'll hear me always say this when I do interviews about it, there's electronic components from Skylab, and when you look at it, you can still see the wiring intact, and this stuff has gone through re-entry.
Sure.
And yet,
and not only re-entry, but impact into the Earth.
Yeah. And then what the residents in Esperance were telling me was they woke up and they heard multiple sonic booms because the thing had exploded into several parts, right? And all of these things are going faster than sound. And all of them were thinking that the radio had told them at midnight it has already crashed into the Indian Ocean. And at midnight, that's when they heard all the sonic booms and seeing the debris. And they all said, we thought World War III had started.
Well, sure.
Yeah. And
sure. They weren't expecting Skylab to come in because they were told it already had.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you can do it, if you have a bucket list still of things to do, I would strongly recommend you go to Western Australia and check out Skylab and actually have that spiritual experience of touching a bit of Skylab. Now, sure. I got. Oh, there we go.
Oh, beautiful.
That's the scene you get when you stand up on Wireless Hill. It's. Oh, no. Stop sharing the screen. You're getting me homesick. Even though I come from the other side of the country. We got one question or comment here from Martin, who is in the United Kingdom in England. He said, "Hi Tim, I still have the 50 years in space patch you signed for me in 2009 at KSC. Hopefully, see you at KSC in June."
Look forward to it.
Will you be there for the SLS launch?
Well, I'll be across the river at least. I'm trying to. I would love to be standing in the same spot that I stood in for Apollo 17 to see the next moon rocket launch, but I haven't had that confirmed yet. I'm still trying though.
Yeah, so hopefully, I've never actually seen a rocket launch like I was telling you earlier. That is one I want to see. If not the test flight, definitely the one with the crew that will go to the moon.
Sure. I would hope if I have one last crew patch in me, I hope it's for an Artemis crew and they will take my artwork to the moon.
Yeah, you're hearing that, NASA? Come on, Mr. Gagnon here is the guy who has to do your because when I talk to NASA, they obviously always listen to what I have to say. So
sure.
Everybody write to NASA and say Tim Gagnon is the one to design the mission patch for the first crew to land on the moon in the Artemis program. So there you
From
go.
their lips to God's ears.
So, Tim, look, we've had a fantastic show. We don't want to keep you much longer. It's getting very late, our time. We're down in the beautiful town of Caen. We were here trying to get people interested in our film, and that's why we're coming to you from Caen rather than Cologne in Germany. It's been absolutely fantastic talking with you, as always. Again, I've thanked you enough that the whole world can hear me say it. Your patch for our film is just so cool. I'm trying to think of non-vulgar Australian terminology to express my feelings. I have to behave.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Dwight. I mean, I share your passion, and your film speaks for itself.
Your patches are the thing. I just remember your table at Space Fest with all the patches in the background. I'm like, oh wow. So I hope next year they have another Space Fest. I really would love.
I would really like to see that. Yeah,
it's definitely have missed it over the last couple of years with lockdown and just the way things go. But we definitely need something like that again. Get all the all the space fans together again and sit around the open fire there and have lots of goodies to drink and eat and stuff. And it's really cool.
Yeah.
So, oh, hey, we've got one person here, Mark. I have the Aspirants patch. Great to see the one solar array on it. Yes. And I don't know about you. Again, sorry we didn't talk a little bit more about the shuttle and so forth, but like you said, it was going to be Skylab centric.
That's fine.
When I see models or paintings or illustrations of Skylab and it's got both solar panels on it, I look at it and go, no, that's not right. I've grown to love the single solar panel, knowing the story, how Kerwin and Conrad got that thing open in the first place.
Sure.
Every time we listen to the EVA, my wife and I are in hysterics, the way those two were getting frustrated and yet still had this sense of humor. Incredible. And again, Tim, your patches do the crews justice, even if they're not flown on a particular mission. If they're commemorative patches, they still honor these guys in the way they need to be honored. And, you know, I'm just so thankful that you're doing that.
Well, thank you very much, Dwight. I appreciate the good words.
Awesome. Well, then I think that's, we've got nothing left. I'm looking at my director here and she's saying to me, no, everything's good. So thank you so much for your time, Tim.
All right.
It is now, what, 5:10 your time, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
So we had one comment. My apologies to the American audience that we had to do it at this time for us trying to coordinate from Europe to do an afternoon or evening show. Yeah, we did the best we could. We did the best we could. It'll be available for reviewing on YouTube or someplace. The Skylab .space will have the details. We've got a shop you can get. We've got very, very limited. Here's the shameless plug. We have, I think, 4 or 5 of the Esperance mission patches left. They were only a series of 500. They are extremely rare. We've got them in the shop. Your patches, Tim, like you were saying earlier, people can find them via your name, and you have them also on your website too, don't you?
Not on my website yet, but I'm in the process of rebuilding that anyway. Oh, okay. But yeah, search online for AB emblem / Tim Gagnon, and it'll take you to the gallery. I can strongly recommend it to anybody considering they are worth every cent, every cent. So, cool. We thank you for a fantastic show. That was so cool. I always like to interview people that tell me stuff that I didn't know, that brings my ego back into line, that I'm like, not infallible. I don't know everything.
Well, you have to understand. Now I'm in the rare company of having been interviewed by you. I mean, there's only some astronauts and some important writers and mission control people, and me, that have been interviewed by Dwight.
By me, my condolences, Tim. Sorry about that. All righty. There's that article. What was the name of the article? Sorry, Director. From which magazine was it? Nice That. That was the one that recently came out about, I think, 4 weeks ago. Well worth reading. That's where you're also talking about how you got started, the perseverance, and this is the one thing. What I think the entire space travel or space history inspires people to do is never give up.
Exactly. If you want to dream, there'll be plenty of people that tell you you can't, or you shouldn't, or you won't, and you don't listen to any of them.
No,
if you want it, you just keep after it.
Absolutely. All righty. So that is the end of our show. I don't know who. Sorry. Now we're copying the link.
Okay.
To the magazine article. We'll just see if that comes up. But Nice That was the name of the magazine that did it. And if they search for your name, they'll find it. So we're good with that. So unfortunately, Mary couldn't join us. That she wanted to desperately, but her plans just didn't allow for it to happen. So sorry about that, Tim. We were hoping
that stuff happens. Life happens.
Yeah. So we're good. We are finished with the show. Thank you so much again for your time, Tim. And I need now a bit of assistance. Being a film director means I have no idea